Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video. Um, as you can probably hear in my voice, I'm feeling a little bit better than I was before. Let me adjust that camera angle really quick. There we go. Anyways, as I was saying, as you can probably hear, I'm feeling a little bit better. You know, whatever I had, it was a bit weird. Came on quick, hit hard, then just kind of disappeared for the most part with some residual effects. But on today's video, going to be talking about one particular scripture that pops across three different verses within the New Testament, Gospels, whatever you would like to call them. But book of Matthew, chapter 12, verse 25, book of Mark, chapter 3, verse 25, and the book of Luke, chapter 11, verse 17. A house divided against itself cannot stand. So we're going to be discussing that particular verse, that phrase, something that is obviously true, but we're going to be discussing that and how that pertains to the flow of time. On my previous video, I kind of created a little bit of a diagram like this, and if you rewatch that video, you can see I kind of stuttered a little bit trying to, figure out what exactly I was trying to say and making sure that I was trying to do or write down and say the correct things. And I realized I missed something a little bit. So, without further ado, I'd like to get started. Okay, so a house divided against itself cannot stand. Okay, so take that literally. A house that is divided against itself cannot stand. So first and foremost, starting with the foundation, if you have a faulty foundation, then that house, sooner than it should, will crumble and fall to pieces, because the foundation of that house will give way, and if the foundation of the house gives way, the rest of it falls. Liken this to the body, okay? The human body, really the foundation of the physical structure of it is the bones. Right, as far as that goes, or the nerves. Either way, if the nerves go, then the body falls. If the bones go, then the body falls. Either way, a house divided against itself cannot stand. But let's talk about the bones. If I break your leg and that leg is broken in two, funny how I said if I break your leg, violent thoughts sometimes. I guess that's just old habits dying hard. But if I were to break my leg and I try to stand on it, I'm going to fall. At the same time, if I cut that leg off entirely, then the bone is broken, and at the same time the nerves are disconnected, and it's not going to work correctly, and it's basically useless at that point. It's going to fall. If I were to get cut in half across the midsection, aside from the aspect of bleeding out, that severs the lower part, and ultimately the body's not going to function the way that it is designed. It's the whole concept of decapitation, that's separation of church and state, ultimately, which is kind of a weird concept, but that's a different one to talk about. Anyways, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So the foundation, liken it to the bones, at the same time, if the structure of the walls decides to start coming apart, it wasn't put together correctly, it wasn't built up to the specifications, the specs on the blueprints, say they're missing certain things, say they didn't put the load-bearing wall in the correct spot, things will crumble down on top of it. But how it specifically pertains to the concept of time, I would like to use an old adage, an old phrase that I was taught in AA, and it is demonstrated by this concept of duality, that whole A versus B concept. Okay. Up here I've got it expressed as unity, right? Starting with the now and expanding outward from there. And then down here, duality, which is starting from these 2 points and trying to come inward like that. So, let's say this is the now right here, this point. What they used to say, or what I used to hear in AA, at the very least, they might still say it in certain groups, is that if you have, that's the now, if you have 1 foot in tomorrow, or 1 foot in the future, and 1 foot in the past, you're pissing on today. So be here in the present moment, focus on what you can do right now. Which, at the time, I thought was just, funny. I thought it was a funny little phrase to say. But, point being, is that whole concept of not being in the now is rooted in duality, as in future tripping, where you get your anxiety, and tripping on the past, which usually comes in the form of depression. And in the middle, where those two meet, people end up having some serious mental health issues. They end up having some mental schisms, okay? Which, as someone who's had experience with that in the past, it's not fun. I understand exactly how not fun that is, okay? So what is the solution to getting out of these modalities of thought, anxiety and depression? And not to say that anxiety is only rooted in the future, but even if the anxiety stems from something that happened in the past, say reliving a memory, typically, from my own experience, that meant that anxiety from that past event wasn't dealt with, and so it is coming back in the future. Back to the future it goes. Straight over there. And at the same time, tripping on things about the future from a past perspective also induced some depression. When I found myself homeless, and when I found myself without friends, and found myself without people who were willing to help me out, and I was in that depressed state of mind, I was very often tripping about the future in the way of never getting out of that darkness of depression. Whereas, realistically, the solution was in getting out of the duality and getting back to the now. Now, with that flow of time, the present moment moves towards the future. And at the same time, the present moment moves towards the past, right? That which is now also becomes the past and becomes the future. With that being said, in conjunction with Matthew 7:1-6 and Luke 6:37, this explains the importance of judge not, that ye be not judged, or judge not, and you will not be judged. If in the now I am producing judgment against myself or against other beings, rather than looking at information specifically, then as I produce that judgment, it goes outward in both directions and then circles back around to come right back and circles right back to me. Okay? Whereas if I focus on information, judging righteous judgment, rather than judging the individual, and instead I focus on truth and love, the truth of the past, and eventually what happens is, by learning the truth of the past, I end up getting a better idea of the now. Right? It's that whole concept of, to understand where you're at, you need to understand where you've been, and in so doing, you'll understand where you're going. So that truth of where I'm at now will give me a better idea of where I'm heading towards the future, which will then also bring further clarity into the now. Again, those song lyrics from Gojira. I focus on the present, concentrate on what I find, accelerate the vision high beyond the curse of time. Bring light to my attention, the walls of vacuum fall, this force increases and tells me where to go. By focusing on the now and concentrating on what one finds, they will get a better idea of where they are going, and at the same time, the quote past present, right? The past moments of the eternal now, that which is gone, we get a better understanding of the whole point of the now, and that is the point, okay? The eternal now, the present moment, is the whole point, and the point of the now. God's greatest gift is eternal life. That is where it is found. The song Shooting Star by Gojira says, everlasting love is ever growing. Hold on to what you have and let it grow. Right? Everlasting love is ever growing. Hold on to what you have and let it grow. Everlasting love is ever dying. It's in the past. You have to let it go. And kind of meditate upon those lyrics with this symbol in mind, and you'll gain a deeper understanding as to the flow of time and the flow of energy within life. Now, with that being said, if what I am producing here and now is love and truth with the words I speak, then in the now, I become healed. If what I am producing in the moment is clarity of thought, then what I receive in return is clarity of thought. If what I am helping people do is better themselves, then ultimately that helps better me. And that, again, comes back to the principles of AA when it comes to service. Right? Sometimes the best way for a recovering alcoholic or addict to keep themselves sober is to work with another alcoholic. In the big book it says, nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work from other alcoholics. I believe that is the first page of chapter 11, working with others. When I was approaching my first year of sobriety, My AA sponsor had me read that for 30 days straight. So that way I really got a grasp on what it takes to, to help other people. I was still in an egoic mindset back then. I wanted to help people, but it was so I could puff my chest up and look good. And obviously that didn't work out. But that's kind of the point, right? When you approach things from that egoic, dual mindset, it will only result in more duality, right? Duality being symbolized by the number 9. You know, 9 as in the German nine, which is no, which is negative, right? When you try to apply ego to anything, all you're going to get is more ego, right? So take that number 9, multiply it by, like, say 7, right? 9 times 7. You're multiplying 7 times 9, you get 63. And through gematria, 6 plus 3 equals 9. So doesn't matter how much you multiply the ego by, the end result, after all is said and done, at the grand totality of things, all you get is more ego. And at the same time, 7 plus 9, if you try and add ego to anything, right, you get 16. 7 plus 9 is 16. 1 plus 6 equals 7. All you get is right back where you started. So, and I mean, going right back to where you started is the entire concept of going in circles, chasing your tail like an Ouroboros, which I think is the whole point. We're supposed to try and learn to transcend that circle of life, and be better than the people that we were, or at the very least get back to the present moment, because that's where the real growth starts. You can even take a more complicated number, say 4,321, multiply it times 9, you get 38,889. Just make sure 9 times 1 is 9, 18, carry the 1, 28, carry the 2, 9 times 4 is 36, plus the 2 is 38, right? You add those digits together, right? 11 plus 8 plus 17, you get 19 plus 17 equals 36, 3 plus 6 equals 9. So that's the whole symbolic aspect to the number 9 and how it pertains to the ego, and the ego being that selfish aspect of the human being, and at the same time it's something that is a bit necessary. But almost dropped my marker. Anyways, I hope you guys got something out of this. If you did, great. Like, comment, subscribe. I hope that everyone's getting something out of this. I mean, I'd love to hear some feedback. Please, if you have any questions, let me know. If you have any suggestions on something that you'd like me to go into, I'd like to hear about that too. In the meantime, there are a few people that, again, I would recommend that are more knowledgeable than I when it comes to this, okay? When it comes to understanding the inner workings of the mind, right? Mark Passio, Dylan Sicoccio, those are good few. I'm a big fan of Manly P. Hall. I'm sure a lot of you have come across Alan Watts. Just a few starters, right? A few people that are a bit more knowledgeable about how things go. Or I shouldn't even say more knowledgeable, just they've done a lot more research and done a lot more work for people to get into. I personally recommend the first two, Dylan Sicoscio and Mark Passio. I've seen over 200 episodes of Mark Passio's podcast, and I trailed off because at about 200 it turns from MP3 into MP4, and trying to convert it from MP4 video files into MP3 is turning into something that's a bit more complicated than I'd like it to be. And Dylan Sicoscio, his books, the Spirit World series, are really good if you're trying to learn language, trying to learn how cultural diffusion takes place, trying to learn how language drift happens, and learn some language skills yourself. His work is, I'd recommend looking at it. At the same time, there's other things that I recommend looking into as well. The trivium of grammar, logic, rhetoric. Right, that's your trivium. And then the quadrivium of arithmetic, geometry, music, or applied harmonics, and then astronomy, or what some people term cosmology, or the cosmologos, cosmological, right? The logic of the cosmos. Anyways, again, if you liked it, like, comment, subscribe if you got something out of it. If you didn't, hey, what can I say? If this isn't for you, it's not for you. You can always leave a comment, or not. Doesn't matter. Do what you want to do. Truth, love, freedom. All right, guys.